PBS would know that.
Would know that, wouldn't they? I was thinking how much I was enjoying this.
Yeah, exactly right. Let me turn to Congresswoman Bachmann and just ask you, Congresswoman, as we've spoken this evening, we're all concerned about getting Americans back to work, and you've laid out some pretty bold ideas with regards to taxation and cutting back the scale of the federal government, and there's no question that's a very important element of getting people back to work. And I'd like to ask you to expand on your other ideas. What do you do to help the American people get back to work, be able to make ends meet? You got families that are sitting around the kitchen table wondering how they're going to make it to the end of the month. You got young people coming out of college, maybe not here at Dartmouth, but a lot of colleges across the country wondering where they can get a job. What would you do beyond the tax policies you described to get people back to work?
Well, I do understand that. I'm a mother of 28 kids, 23 foster kids, 5 biological kids. I get how difficult it is for young people right now to get jobs right out of college. It's very, very tough. And the solutions that I'm offering in my plan, which, if I can give a commercial, are at michelebachmann.com. The solutions that I'm offering aren't just a silver bullet. It's not just the tax code. It's also dealing with the regulatory burden. Because businesses, my husband and I started our own successful business. I'm 55. I spent my whole life in the private sector. I get job creation, too. And the business world is looking at $1.8 trillion every year in compliance costs with government regulations. That has to go. So I want to get rid of that. It's the mother of all repeal bills. But the number one reason that employers say that they aren't hiring today is Obamacare. And I was the leading critic for President Obama in Washington, D.C. against Obamacare. That's why I was the first member of Congress to introduce that bill to repeal Obamacare. I understand that's what's inhibiting job creation and job growth. We have to repeal that. I also introduced and I fought on Barney Frank's committee against Dodd-Frank, which is the Housing and Jobs Destruction Act. That's why I was the chief author of that bill as well. There's much more to my solutions. Go to michelebachmann.com and you can find out.
Yes, now?
Yes, now. We're in the live free or die state, and I oppose the single biggest government intrusion into the private sector, the Wall Street bailout, the TARP program. I opposed it because it violated the principles of our Constitution, the spirit of our Constitution, and because of the experience I had that if you open up the door of government involvement in the private sector, some president will, and in fact did, drive a truck through it and explode the size of the federal government and constrict our freedom. The interesting thing here is the 4 people on this panel that actually supported TARP at the time of its passage are the people who say that they are the anti-Washington candidates, that they are the business candidates. And they're the 4 on this program that supported the Washington bailout, giving Washington, naively, I would say, tools to constrict our freedom.
So do you have a question for
my question is,
right.
you prompted it perfectly, because here's my question. My question is, since I think Herman Cain is giving naively a tool in his 999 plan of giving Washington a huge new tax opportunity to get money through a sales tax, can we trust you that with your lack of experience that you won't continually give Washington the ability to take freedom away from freedom-loving people here in the live free or die state?
There are 3 deterrents to
and by the way, the 4 people were Governor Huntsman, Governor Perry, Herman Cain, and Governor Romney all supported TARP.
There are 3 deterrents to this nightmare scenario you described in terms of how bad things are going to be because we're trying to fix the real problem. The first deterrent is that I'm going to ask the United States Congress to include a 2/3 majority vote before they can raise the 999 tax. The second deterrent is the fact that because it is visible, simple, and transparent, the American people are going to be the ones to hold Congress's feet to the fire. The third deterrent is that I will be president and I won't sign anything that raises the 999.
Yeah.
With that, we take a break and come back for our final segment. Stay with us.
I know what. With the thoughts of credit downgrades, financial turmoil, and skyrocketing debt dancing in my head. So, how do we fix it? If you just use spending cuts, the entire budget would have to be cut by 31%. Draconian cuts that would threaten defense and the social safety net. If defense and Social Security are exempted, then everything else would have to be slashed by about 50%. Highly unlikely America would go for that. If you try to solve the problem with just revenue increases, taxes would have to increase close to 50%. Who wants that? The only solution is a bipartisan long-term plan that kicks in when our economy is stronger. This will restore confidence today, because we'll have a real solution in place to address our national debt. More importantly, it gives me the same chance at a bright future that other generations had. And that's really what this is about, right? Right?
We are back at Dartmouth in Hanover, New Hampshire, talking with the 8 Republican candidates about a variety of issues. Clearly, we come back to health care. I want to go to Governor Perry. Explain to me what you think the difference is about your health care ideas and Governor Romney's health care ideas, and how you see mandates and how he sees mandates and the Constitution. Because not only has there been some exchange here, Governor Christie got involved today.
Well, certainly the issue of health care is probably one of the biggest one that's facing us. I mean, there are a lot of Americans sitting out there today, and getting those people back to work is the most important thing that we do as a country, so that they can have the opportunity to purchase health care. And I think that is probably the biggest issue that are facing Americans. There are people sitting out there around the kitchen table watching TV tonight, who are looking for someone to lay out an idea that truly will get this country back working again. And that's why I lay out, without having any congressional impact at all, how to get our energy industry back to work, and back to work very quickly. But in the state of Texas, from the standpoint of what we've done to make access of health care better, we passed the most sweeping tort reform in the nation in 2003. We also passed Healthy Texas, which expands the private sector insurance, and we've driven down the cost of insurance by 30%. So those are some of the ways that the states, but the real issue for us is Medicaid, and how to get the flexibility on Medicaid so that the innovators can occur in the states. I can promise you, whether it's Governor Jindal or myself or Susana Martinez over in New Mexico, that's where you'll find the real innovation in health care. The way to deliver health care more efficiently, more effectively, is to block grant those dollars back to the state and keep this federal government that has this one-size-fits-all mentality from driving the thought process that we've seen that's destroyed health care in this country today.
But Governor Perry, as the Washington Post fact checker noted, Texas has had 16 waivers for Medicaid. So how can you say that the problem is that the federal government has not given Texas enough flexibility?
They haven't anywhere near given the states. I think what you should see is the block granting, not having to go to Washington, D.C. and ask them, Mother, may I, every time you come up with a concept or an idea. Block granting back to the states. I'll guarantee you the governors and their innovators in their states will come up with ways to better deliver health care more efficiently, more effectively, more cost efficiently. And that's what this country is looking for, is a president who understands that we have these 50 laboratories of innovation. Free up these states from Washington, D.C.'s one-size-fits-all.
Julianna.
Thank you, Charlie. Mr. Cain, you disapprove of Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke, and we all know that your priority is 999. But one of the most important appointments that you're going to have to make your first year, should you be president, would be Fed Chairman. So which Federal Reserve Chairman over the last 40 years do you think has been most successful and might serve as a model for that appointment?
Alan Greenspan.
Why?
Because that's when I served on the board of the Federal Reserve in the early 1990s. And the way Alan Greenspan oversaw the Fed and the way he coordinated with all of the Federal Reserve banks, I think that it worked fine back in the early 1990s. Now, on that same point, I have already identified 2 candidates, which I cannot give their names, to replace Mr. Bernanke in anticipation of having that responsibility. We must narrow the mission of the Fed first. I don't believe in ending the Fed. I believe we can fix the Fed by getting their mission refocused on monetary price stability, and I have candidates in mind that will help us do
So you have 2 appointments waiting in the wings for 2013, for that when his
Yes.
term is up 2014.
Yes, I have 2 candidates waiting in the wings
How about a hint?
to take that job. I got to keep them confidential.
Okay, Congressman Paul.
Spoken like a true insider. No, Alan Greenspan was a disaster. Everybody in Washington, liberals and conservatives, said he kept interest rates too low, too long. Of course, the solution was lower them even more, and they think that's going to solve our problem. But if I had to name one person that did a little bit of good, that was Paul Volcker. He at least knew how to end or help, end the inflation. But of course, with my position that I don't think highly of the Federal Reserve, and I think we should have sound money, and we shouldn't have somebody deciding what the interest rate should be and how much money supply we should have. I mean, nobody satisfies me. But certainly Alan Greenspan has ushered in the biggest bubble. And what did we do? We've continued the same thing, doing the same thing. We think the inflation under Alan Greenspan was bad, so we're trying to solve the problem by inflating even further. So Bernanke compounds the problem. He's inflating twice as fast as Greenspan was. But Greenspan caused so much trouble, and he used to believe in the gold standard. I think he's coming around to that. And before he retires, he'll write his biography and explain why he's coming back to the gold standard.
I want to go from a gold standard to a small business person who is from New Hampshire, who's in the audience with us and has a question about small business, of which she has founded one. Margot Thompson.
Businesses like mine have great difficulty obtaining credit. What specifically would you do to make bank lending more accessible to small businesses?
If you would direct it to...
I was told to direct it to you.
Oh, so Governor Romney? Yes.
Give her the answer, Charles.
I ask questions, not answer them, Governor.
Okay.
I forgot to explain that.
What's happened in this country under the Obama administration is that you have a president who I think is well-meaning, but just over his head when it comes to the economy. And the absolute wrong time to have the absolute wrong people put together a financial regulatory bill was right now, and Barney Frank and Chris Dodd. They were the wrong guys at the wrong time, because what they did with this new bill is usher in what will be hundreds and thousands of pages of new regulations. The big banks, the big money center banks in Wall Street, they can deal with that. I spoke with one banker there that said they have hundreds of lawyers working on that legislation and trying to implement it. For community banks that provide loans to businesses like yours, they can't possibly deal with a regulatory burden like that. Then you have inspectors coming in and writing down their assets and saying they're not worth as much as the bank thought they were worth, and therefore the banks are unable to lend. Small community banks across this country are starving and struggling because of inspectors that are making their job impossible, and because of regulation that's fine for the big banks because they can deal with it. It's a killer for the small banks, and those small banks loaning to small businesses and entrepreneurs are what have typically gotten our economy out of recession. What the president has done on almost every dimension is exactly the wrong thing to get this economy going again.
Congresswoman Bachmann.
I'd like to add to that, because the Dodd-Frank bill is the Jobs and Housing Destruction Act. And I have spoken to Iowa bankers, and they told me that they are going to see the collapse of community banks, just like Mitt said, all across the state. I talked to a banker in Texas who owns multiple branch banks. He said he's going to lose $20 million on his bottom line this year because of all of the compliance. So government is putting a huge layer of regulation on banks. We will see literally thousands of banks close their door. That will be hard for small business owners like you and like me. And so that's going to hurt real people, and it will lead to job destruction. That's why I introduced the bill to repeal Dodd-Frank, because it'll hurt credit, not add to credit. And by the way, that's why we see the new $5